I'm Lisa. I'm the Barefoot Pampered chef, and I am going to do, hopefully, 3 recipes in this demo. So the very first thing that I do before I do a demo, or before I cook anytime, is make sure I have the recipes down, or at least notes on how to do the recipe for myself. So I have notes all over the kitchen. The other thing that I make sure is that I have my mise en place, which is loosely described as stuff in place. So anything that needs to be measured out or cut ahead of time, I have in bowls so I can just grab them as I go. And that way you know if you have all the ingredients to make the dishes. So I'm kind of going with the theme of hiding veggies and things for kids, or very veggie involved, but not veggie forward dishes. So what we're gonna make today is veggie meatballs. So they're actually meatballs, but they have veggies in them, and 2 different kinds of dipping sauces. Now these dipping sauces, one is more of a marinara, so you can use that with a pasta if you would like. The other one is a kind of a creamy Alfredo-y type of a sauce, so you can use that as a pasta if you would like as well. I'm just going to use them both to dip the meatballs in. So the very first thing that I'm going to do, and I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between the recipes, so I'll let you know when I move. The very first thing we're going to work on is we're going to get our veggies kind of sauteing for the marinara or the red sauce. So I've got 3 tablespoons of olive oil in my pan, and I'm going to turn that on about medium. And what we're going to add to that, what I have in my manual processor here, is I have a half of a medium onion, 3 celery stalks, and I have a extra large head of, or a clove of garlic. It actually calls for 4 cloves of garlic, but this head was like this big on this one that I just picked up from the roadside veggie market. So I'm gonna get these all nice and processed. Now this sauce, you can make it in more of a, like a chunky style, more of a hearty if you want, or you can really process these a lot. So I think I have all of them fairly processed up. I'm going to use this for another recipe, so I'm just going to set it aside. The good thing about these recipes is all their flavors go together, so I don't need to clean anything out before I use it for something else. So I'm going to put these, so we have, like I said, a half of a medium onion, we have 3 stalks of celery, and we have 4 cloves of garlic in here. I'm going to try to get all of that in here. To this, I'm going to add what I've already mise en placed, which is 1 cup of shredded carrots that I just shredded up using my veggie strip maker. Remember, you can always put this stuff right down into your sink. And then this is going to go for 2 recipes. This is grated zucchini. Again, I just grated this on my veggie strip maker. So I'm going to use 1.5 cups of this. So I have 3 cups of it, so we'll use the rest of it for another recipe. And I'm going to get all that into here nicely and get that sauteing. So while that is sauteing, I'm going to move on to another recipe. The next recipe we're going to move on to is the meatballs. So in here I have 1 pound of beef. We're going to use the rest of our grated zucchini. We are going to use, get this out of my sink because I need it again. 1 egg. So I've got my farm fresh eggs. Break that in. We're going to use 1/4 cup of dry bread crumbs and 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese. So I have those both in here. We're going to use about 1/4 cup of onion. So I'm going to pull out my chopper again here really quick. And we're also going to use 2 cloves of garlic. So there are 2 cloves. Get this all How fast is that? I love this thing. So that's all of my garlic and my onion. Put that in there. And we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of paprika. I like Hungarian paprika. I get it from the West Side Market. You can buy it at any store. 1/4 teaspoon of dried oregano. If we were going to use fresh, remember that it's a 3-to-1 ratio. So 1/4 teaspoon of dry is equal to 3/4 teaspoon of the fresh. And then a little bit of salt and pepper. So we're going to put that all in there. And we're going to mix this until it's combined. Now you can do this with your hands because we're going to be forming the meatballs with our hands anyway. I'm just going to get it started with my mix and scraper here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash this off. And then I'm going to go into my noodles, or my vegetables, and just make sure these are sauteing down. You almost want these to caramelize while they're cooking in there. That caramelization gives it that nice brown flavor. So we're going to let those sit for quite a while. So I'm going to mix these up with my hands. This is a fun thing for little kids to do. Unless you don't want them knowing how many vegetables are going into their meatballs. I'm just kind of folding this over. You really don't want to over mix meatballs because they can get kind of tough on you here. I'm just trying to get it all kind of nice and mixed together there. And then what we're going to do with this, and I'm going to make a couple to show you, I'm probably going to finish up the rest later here. We're going to make about a walnut sized meatball, probably about yay big. Let me make a few of them to show you. And then I'm going to put it on my large white stone, and these meatballs are going to cook at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. I'll make one more here and I'll show you. Put these over here, wash the hands. And then we'll move on to this, finishing up this sauce. So you're just going to put those meatballs onto your large white, or even a some sort of a cookie sheet that has lined with foil. This, it probably won't stick, and it'll give it a little bit of a crispy bottom. So that's what I want to do with those. So the meatballs, technically, after we pop them in the oven for 20 minutes at 400 degrees, are done. The ingredients in those, just before I get to this, because it needs just a little bit more sauteing, we have 1 cup of grated zucchini, 1 pound of ground beef, 1 egg, 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese, 1/4 cup of dried breadcrumbs. We have 1/4 cup, or about 1/4 onion. We have 2 cloves of garlic, 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, 1/4 teaspoon of dried oregano. Remember our 3-to-1 ratio. And we've got some salt and pepper in there. So these are looking nice and caramelized. You can get that veggie smell, that, you know, cooking facial here. I apparently have one little piece of celery that didn't want to get in the game plan. So that one's coming out. Now what I'm going to add to this is I'm going to add a can of petite diced tomatoes. I left the everything in because that sauce is really good. And then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of tomato puree, 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. So that's going to give it a punch and just kind of bring out all of the flavors. That vinegar, that acidity brings out all the flavors. 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, some salt, just a pinch, and some pepper. And I put in 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Now we are going to add fresh oregano to this, but because it is fresh, we want to add that at the very end. And we're going to add 3 tablespoons of fresh oregano. So if you only have dry, you only add 1 tablespoon of dry. So I'm going to give this all a good mix here. And I'm going to turn it down on low. And I'm going to let this simmer for about 20 minutes. At that 20-minute mark, go ahead and add in your oregano and then let it simmer for about 10 more minutes. All right, so the last part of this meal that we're going to do is a kind of a take on Alfredo, but it's a cauliflower Alfredo. So I'm going to grab my manual processor again here, and we're going to do about 2½ cups of cauliflower. Now you can run this on your vegetable strip maker, or you can just run it through your manual food processor. So I'm just going to do that in portions here. And we're also going to do 4 garlic cloves. So once I get this one processed, I'm going to add the 4 garlic cloves to the next batch. Cauliflower is not being polite today. Here we go. We'll do those in the next batch. So it looks nice and riced. We're just going to dump that into that bowl. Throw in more of these. We're going to do some more. I'll throw in these small ones. I'll leave that large one for the last batch. And we'll throw in our lovely, huge cloves of garlic. No one is going to want to kiss anyone else tonight, just saying. Mainly. It's alright if there are some big chunks in this, because we're actually going to pop it in the microwave. And we're going to microwave it for a few minutes, and then when it's all nice and microwaved, we're just going to mash it up. So I just want to kind of show you how to make it, and then I'll show you when we pop it in the microwave. There we go. That's what we want. All of that in there. So like I said, I have about 2½ cups of cauliflower. Make my station a little bit more presentable here. 4 garlic cloves. We are going to add to this about 2½ to 3 cups of veggie stock and 1 tablespoon of butter. Now I had some chicken stock left over from my other meal, so I'm just going to use that. If you wanted to make it more of a vegan dish, you could omit the butter and you could use a soy milk, because we are going to use a milk in this, and you can use a veggie stock. So 2.5 to 3 cups of veggie stock, 1 tablespoon of butter. We're going to add 1/2 cup of milk. I have some half and half to make it a little bit creamier. And then we're going to add some salt and some pepper. Now I apologize, these are not Pampered Chef items, but I love them too much to stop using them. So all of this goes into our microwave for about 5 minutes until that starts to all come together into kind of a creamy sauce. And that's your Alfredo. So usually when I make an Alfredo, I use kind of a cheater's version that my mother-in-law taught me, which is amazing. I just use heavy whipping cream, bring it to a light rolling boil, and add in as much Parmesan cheese as you want and a little bit of salt and pepper, and it makes a really great Alfredo sauce. This one, I may add in some cheese at the end. It seems like this recipe is screaming for some Parmesan cheese just to finish that off. So let's just go back through these 2 sauce recipes really quick here. The cauliflower Alfredo sauce, we had 4 garlic cloves, we had 1 tablespoon of butter, 2.5 cups of cauliflower, 3 cups of veggie stock, salt, pepper, and 1/2 cup of half and half, or 1/2 cup of milk. The sauce for the veggie sauce, or the veggie marinara, we put in 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, and into that we added 1 cup of grated carrot, 1.5 cups of grated zucchini, 1/2 of a medium onion, 3 stalks of celery, 4 cloves of garlic, and then we let that saute and brown and get all nice and kind of caramelized. I could have left that going for a little bit longer, but for the sake of this video, we just kind of sweated them down a little bit. 1 can of diced tomatoes, 2 tablespoons of tomato puree, 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, salt and pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and then 3 tablespoons of fresh oregano. And then we also have our meatballs, which we add all of the ingredients and we pop them in a 400-degree oven for 20 minutes. And you have a really heavy veggie meal that's not exactly veggie forward, and you should be able to trick your kids into eating it. So hopefully you learned a lot during this demonstration. I know there was a lot going on. We used our veggie strip maker for a lot of the processing, as well as our manual processor, which is just, it's super amazing to have on hand. You can make baby food in this thing and you won't wake up the baby. Think about that. Think about those processors that wake up the baby when you're trying to make baby food. We used our 1 cup prep sets. This happens to have my oregano in it that I can't forget to add to this sauce. The microplane grater I used for my Parmesan cheese. We used my 3-cup silicone prep bowl. We used the classic batter bowl, which you can actually bake cakes in. This thing's amazing. And that's about it. So hopefully you learned a great, valuable 3 recipes here. And you can find everything that I've mentioned on www.pamperedchef.biz/Lisa Wright. LISAWRIGHT. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.